Seamus, thanks for jumping on with us. For the audience who's listening, this is Seamus Kotyk. He is the goaltending development coach with the Buffalo Sabres, and he's joining us here on this chat. And we're going to have a monthly chat. This will be obviously the first of the series. Thanks for joining us, Seamus, and spending the time on with a very strange schedule, I'm sure, with you guys right now, but with COVID. But again, thanks for doing this, and we're excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
First off, here's a question for you. This is very much your area of expertise. As long as I've known you, especially since you took the job in Buffalo, you at first, correct me if I'm wrong, your main focus there was more of a scouting role, correct?
Yeah, correct. Over the years in Buffalo, I've always done various aspects of goalie and like goalie work, scouting, development, coaching. But the core that has not changed year to year is scouting, evaluating, that kind of stuff. So when I was brought in 8 years ago, it was in a scouting role on the amateur side, with the opportunity to work with goalie prospects that we had at the time that were only in the East Coast League. And from that point, over time, it's evolved into some different responsibilities. But that's how I got my foot in the door.
Okay, so why don't we just go right from there? How does your role evolve, and what is it today?
Okay, so during my time in Buffalo, there's been several managements and several management changes, each with a different vision of how they want to utilize development, goalie specific development and scouting. When I first came in, I was actually hired by Darcy Regier and Kevin Devine, and they gave me the opportunity to join the amateur staff, help them evaluate goalies, but there was no clear plan. It was a concept and an idea that they wanted to add a goalie particular scout. So we just learned as the season went on with how to make the schedule, how to plan an attack. But during that time, we knew our goalies at the East Coast level were not getting attention that they deserved.
Yeah.
So that was a big opportunity for me to kind of show or grow within the organization with that I can coach and what I can offer. Darcy's time came to an end. Tim Murray was hired to be the general manager. Tim had a big scouting background. There were already an NHL goalie coach in the organization at the time, as well as an American League goalie coach. Tim saw the role the same, but with just more responsibility in both. So what that means is continued amateur scouting at a heavier work capacity. That amateur scouting it grew to the point where I was evaluating forwards and defensemen at the games that you went to, and I'm sure it's pretty standard for other organizations, but where that helped myself grow was when you start to understand the value of a prospect and the projection of a prospect. I was able to learn about the value that a goalie can bring the organization versus a different position. During that time under Tim Murray, I was responsible for the development of our draft picks, which basically means the amateur status, who we own the rights of. So example, goalies that you just drafted that are returning to their amateur league, whether it's in Europe, NCAA, Major Junior, they fell under my umbrella. And we grew that player development staff. We started making some hires on player development, so the attention the prospects were getting got greater. But always with Tim, the majority of my time was scouting. Then there was another management change. Jason Botterill came in to be the general manager. Worked with Jason, and his vision was very focused on player development, which incorporates goaltender development. So along with the player development staff, that development group took a big step with the vision he brought in with Randy Sexton and Steve Greeley, and Steve was our director guiding us. So that's the last 3 seasons. The goalie development really took off for me. During that time, I grew with my responsibilities. I was then added to coaching our American League team, overseeing the coaching for our goalie prospects that were at the East Coast level. Obviously, being involved with the amateur draft from a goalie standpoint only, and making sure there was a plan in place and overseeing the development of our draft picks wherever they were playing in the world. So that was the last 3 years. And it took time to balance, juggle, learn more about it. This year, there's another management group. Kevin Adams is in charge. The roles remain the same, just with everybody else in the world right now in COVID, kind of home-based, trying the best to make the situation work. But in a normal world, the role would continue on the way it was working the last 3 years.
So do you find that, I pump your tires. I think you're one of the best at what you do, and I feel like, just hearing you speak right now, it's evident to me that you're one of the pioneers in this job, and you've had to be very versatile in many different shapes and forms. Can you kind of go on a little bit of that with the way, I mean, obviously you explain kind of the road, but in showing your bosses, hey, I can coach, and showing your bosses, hey, these are other elements in factors in which I can help and give more value to our organization. There wasn't exactly a direct path or this is the job. You found a lot of the road yourself, and it sounds like those were elements where there could be real change to what you were doing. So can you kind of go on some of those maybe discussions, or are there those kind of discussions with your management as you go through these transitions?
For sure. Now, the way I've always approached it is I've never sought out a position within this organization. It's I don't have, for me, it's not, okay, my goal is to take this guy's job. I just don't believe that. Once you start working together, I've always approached it, being a part of the Sabres. The first few years, you're more grateful, and you are pinching yourself. It's the NHL. There's some really special moments that are part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you remove that and you realize the job needs to be done, and you watch and you're a part of the processes that take place, from scouting meetings, which at that time were new to me. I had only sat in one scouting meeting in the past, and that was with Sault Ste. Marie. And Kyle Dubas was nice enough at the time as a GM to invite the coaching staff in. But when I got to the NHL level, I was able to be a part of the major checkpoints, I guess you can call them, which are scouting meetings that typically happen training camp, mid-year meetings, year-end meetings. I got to be a part of the combines, the draft, development camps, and then going back in the calendar year again to rookie camps and training camps. So I watched probably for 2 years, absorbed, and then you got to look for an opportunity to put your voice out there when the time is right, but make sure you're prepared when it's that right moment. And I didn't think I knew the answers, but I definitely thought these were some holes that could get filled and some ways we could be stronger as a group. So what I just did with myself was trial and error, realizing as a goalie when I played hockey, what I liked or didn't like, what I felt was lacking in my career. and then just kind of try to apply that to when I do my job.
Yeah.
I always thought the development job was, for me, the super cool job. When I was with the Sioux Greyhounds, we had a couple of goalies that were drafted at the time, and the development guys came in, and I just remember saying, wow, that's awesome. Like, I thought those guys were the coolest guys in the world. So, I just always took my interactions along the way, and how did they carry themselves? What did they do? What were they looking for? And just tried to,
So stop you right there.
oh yeah.
Who are some guys who have kind of helped you in that transition? Other goalie developers or management people, to kind of help you find your way.
There's not one specific person, because it's hard when you start to do that, because you're going to leave somebody out. But when I was with the Sioux Greyhounds, we had Matt Murray at the time, and Matt was drafted by Pittsburgh. Mike Bales was their goaltender development coach at the time. So from Mike, it was more, just how did he come in? What did he do when he came into the Sioux? What was he doing? Like, I'd ask him, like, what are you looking for? Stuff like that. We had Jack Campbell for half a season, and Mike Valley was in that position. And I actually think Mike was the goalie coach at the time, and he came in. So it was just, those opportunities to interact with NHL staff. A scout once told me, you need somebody to pull you up a level, but you got to walk it once you get there. And there's been a lot of people who helped my career move forward. Dave Torrey was a big reason for me getting an interview in Buffalo, and he was my GM in the Sioux that hired me, and he was on the Buffalo staff when they were looking for a goalie scout per se. But tying that back into the Sabres and how I've gone about my business there, it's surprising at times, but you put yourself in a meeting and in a room, and there's a lot of conversations that happen. And in these conversations, you leave afterwards and you think about it, and you're like, some of them you agree with, some of them you think, all right, let's get them to look at this a little bit differently. And that's kind of how I've gone about what I've done in the organization. And then I just take ideas, and there's a lot of resources available in different aspects, and just the initiative to say, okay, I'm doing this, and find the research, find the information, present it forward. But I've never looked at it as, all right, here's my end position in the staff. It was more like, I don't even care what they call you. It's just go to work, do your job, and make it better. So that's how I've been. I've been so lucky to where I am today as a professional to where I am 8 years ago when I came in is not even in the same conversation. So from my viewpoints to what I do to where I want to go with it.
Yeah. And so do you obviously there's a big element to views, right? Like how many views you take in a season. And from year to year, how would you, I guess the proper way I'm trying to say this is how do you see your eye now? From year 1 to year 3 to 5 to, and some of the lessons in between where you've learned, because you're going to learn from trial and error, as you're saying, but you're going to learn from, good things you've done and good things where maybe you gambled on or, your intuition on a player, but at the same time, and you're going to learn from a lot of your mistakes too, I imagine.
100%. For me, with scouting and the views, there are only so many hockey games you can go to. The calendar is dictated, and you need to be efficient with your scheduling and how you want to go about. But where that comes down to is a plan. You need a plan. You need a plan for absolutely everything you do. How am I going to do it? What is my end goal? Go to the back and start forward again. That's how I go about it with the scouting. But year one, like even if you went 2-year increments, year 1, 3, 5, 7, and where I'm at today, from a scouting standpoint, what I've learned is how to give your opinion and believe in your opinion. Be quick, be precise. Tim Murray had a thing, why say it in 4 words when you can say it in 3? It always made me laugh. But basically, don't sit on the fence. And it comes down to, do you want them or not? Mm-hmm. And when you ask yourself that question, when you're creating a list or you're evaluating a goaltender, it really helps you put him into what column he's going to fall for you. Don't be afraid to be wrong. You are going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong a lot. But just believe in how you say what you're saying to the group. Believe why, and the group will always respect that. If you waver and change your opinion like a fence gate, it's the quickest way to lose the confidence of the group and yourself. And have a core values of what you look for, core belief, whatever it is. Every organization is going to have their internal core beliefs, but as a scout, you're going to have yours as well. And that's what I'm talking about, having a plan. It just helps you move the process along. You can always say this goaltender probably will play in the NHL, but he's not a goaltender for me for these specific reasons. Like, that's an example you can do. It took a while for me to have that confidence to stand up in the room and challenge people with seniority and challenge your management and explain why my thought processes are the way they are. That took a lot of time. From a coaching standpoint, where I evolved was, I had a young career as a coach, 3 years with the Sioux Greyhounds. Probably wasn't enough to really find myself and know what I am or who I am as a coach, to move forward fast. So I was thankful for, when I started, I was working with East Coast goaltenders, and I didn't put a ton of added pressure, but it's tough finding your way. How do you communicate with these guys? There's a big difference with the pros versus with junior kids. There's just a maturity level, a physical level, but also from an information standpoint, you have personalities. The egos are going to be a little bit different. There's past accomplishments. There's guys on the way up that maybe need a little deflating, and there's guys on the way down that are riding something they did 7 years ago. So for me, it was being able to handle that. I didn't play in the NHL. I played in the American League. I sat on the bench for a handful of NHL games, but I never started one, never went in and cleaned up a mess. So for me, I had a hard time mentally when I first started getting on the ice at an NHL camp. And, I felt, am I qualified to tell this guy what to do? Those were honest things I questioned myself with. And it took a few years of just believing in myself and finding my path. And when I had my core beliefs better, I think I became better.
Yeah. And obviously the time that, you spent in the East Coast League, as an ex-player, you did the journey. You've made the journey. You tried the journey to get to the National Hockey League as a pro. There's a lot of fruit inside of that journey, which I'm sure you related, to those prospects. So did you kind of, that was more of, your bread and butter, so to speak, and then things got stronger and stronger with the relationships, obviously. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I feel I relate to those guys in that aspect, because if you connected to your career, you always feel you're close. I've been sent to the East Coast League as a player. I knew how it hurt me. So when I deal with the goalie, I can understand that maybe they're hurt or they're upset. And I'm not knocking the East Coast League, but the point I'm trying to make is everybody has an upwards mentality. Mm-hmm. And so when you take what you perceive as a step back or down the food ladder, you defeat yourself. The American League, the want to get called up, the watching the games at night and wondering, okay, is my phone going to ring tomorrow and I'm going to the NHL? Like, those emotions, that's where I felt I was able to relate to our younger prospects with, and just help them along the way. And, remind them it's never as bad as you think it's going. And, but also remind them it's never as good as you think it's going either. But that's why I enjoy the role I'm in, because I feel I can compare a lot of my life and my playing career and the mistakes I made, and help them, not make the same mistake or help them through the situation. I just find a lot of enjoyment in the role, and it makes me happy. And I find it not easy in the sense it's a cakewalk, but I don't find it hard to sit there and discuss those situations or relate to them, because I for whatever aspect I walked in those same scenarios.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings me into a couple of things here. So scouting from an amateur standpoint, what are you looking for? This is a very open-ended question.
For sure. There's no secret formula. I mentioned earlier, you need your core values, your core beliefs. As simple as it sounds, you're looking for something that's going to be a separating element in your game. Everybody in the NHL is good, and everybody at the NHL level and the American League level are skilled. What is going to separate you? And I'm not referencing a really great stick or really good puck handler. I like skill sets, footwork, mobility, range, like fundamentals. Where are they, and are they going to get better? Can they get better? What do you have, and what don't you have in your game? None of it is a breaking point, but you have to make sure that NHL goalies have these particular skills, and American League goalies have these sets of skills. You have to envision the direction they're going, how they're going to get there, and do they have those attributes that you particularly believe in, as well as the organization. So from a scouting standpoint, when you go to a game, it's pretty quick to pick up on those. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't take too long to really know if the kid is going to meet your criteria or not. Like, I'm not talking 5 minutes, but it's you have a fairly good idea of how he aligns with your view fairly quick.
Okay, so just to get into a couple of things here. So with regards to there, like, I can only speak from my experience. When I was in the OHL and we would do a lot of scouting, and even now, like, there's a lot of scouting involved with Lugano. I'm looking at, specific stuff, and some of the stuff that, kind of scares me sometimes is when I see over technical guys, and depending on, their age groups and whatnot. You're in a specific age group with dealing with the draft. Is an over technical goalie, something where you're obviously are your senses heightened up because of that, and you're like, oh God, is this a bad thing, or is this a good thing, or is it?
I think it's situational. I think there's a difference between being a really good hockey school goalie and being able to think. If I'm seeing somebody that's highly structured, I just want to see if they can think for themselves. I know like if it looks too rehearsed, how are they reacting to broken plays? Like how are they reacting when there's chaos? And I feel those are things that can't be recreated or maybe can't. They're more challenging to recreate from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah.
So, I look for some things that are important to me in those guys, and then if that helps me make my decision. But I think a better way to answer it is if you're not polished at 17, 18, 19, I wouldn't worry too much about it. There's lots of time to clean you up. These guys that are getting drafted are still 5, 6, 7 years away. Not too many guys are doing it in shorter amounts of time. So if you feel you're sloppy or there's something missing in your game, that's not going to be looked against you as much as it is if, like you said, are you really polished? The negative to that is where does the game go? But the positive is it's there. So
Well said.
How do you want to look at it?
Yeah, no, that's well said. Okay, so with that in mind, I'll give you an example of maybe the due diligence. My question is, where is your due diligence on a player, not just from an on-ice standpoint, but from an away standpoint? I don't want to get too lengthy here in my question, but where is leadership inside of that due diligence as well? For example, I don't have the experience from a National Hockey League that the component that you do. When I was coaching in the OHL, when I saw a specific player, I'll even just mention his name because he is a client, and I'm pretty sure he'd be okay with it. When I saw Ken Appleby go through a lobby at 15, there were a lot of factors, and because we wanted to draft him so high, there were a lot of factors that just went to ease from just seeing him walk through the lobby. Because the first thing he did, and I noticed immediately, was just the way he handled his family. He handled them with a certain amount of respect. He handled his mother and father with a certain amount of respect. And you could just sense that there was just a different level of maturity to him, where I've seen the complete opposite. And I when I was doing the OHL stuff, I would sit in the back. I would be very out of the way, but these were things that I was looking for. And can you kind of talk about, do you guys do that kind of stuff? Is that a factor? Are these little elements? And I think it's interesting for the players and for the young guys listening, obviously, because for me, you're always being watched.
100%. What I've learned is every organization is going to have their, criteria for due diligence, but the commonality is it's pretty intense. And each scout has their spin to what they want to do, but the research, you have to expect that not only the current coaches, trainers, medical staff, and support staff with your team, but previous teams 2-3 years back, some teams will go that far. School teachers, guidance counselors, your billet family. You cannot be shocked if these people are contacted in some way. Medically, obviously, they're going to know everything about you medically, but they want to know you and your tendencies, your personality. It's not just, okay, I'm being watched for 5 months in my draft year. There's a lot known about you, and it does come into play. There are situations where there's an elite talent that is overlooked or removed from a draft list for what is deemed as a red flag. Those are players that still play in the NHL. These are players that do have NHL careers, but a certain organization will feel you don't meet their particular core criteria, and they are not someone they want to invest in to be a part of their family. So it goes a long way, and it doesn't mean breaking a stick over the net will be deemed as poor character or have you removed from a list. But if there's consistent habits and consistent tendencies, like, it might not meet some other team's values of what they want in a player. Just understand they're going to know a lot more about you than you think. And they're going to put a lot of weight onto things in your life that you don't think people notice. And yes, they will look at your social media platform, and what they interpret from that is something you might not agree with, but they'll form an opinion. So just always conduct yourself in a good manner. And that doesn't guarantee for team if you have a clean social media page, but if you're putting compromising photos or comments, everybody's looking for a way to say, hey, we don't want this kid. Don't give them a reason.
Okay, I like awesome stuff. Okay, we're gonna switch gears a little bit here, and we're gonna talk about the development process from you. So, I'd like you to talk a little bit about it, but first, I just like to kind of ask you just a generic question about, because me and you we've had conversations about a kid's path, and what I really would love to talk about for the audience, what I think it's going to help a lot of goalies out there, is that if I'm a 16-year-old and I'm not getting notoriety from this league at this point, and it cruises into 17, maybe option B is better, and why? Or at 18, if I'm getting notice all of a sudden from major junior, is that the right thing? And dependent on various things such as do they already have a starter? Are you going to play immediately? Going in at an 18-year-old, because it's all about windows, right? And we can use different examples with players as we go, but I know we've had these conversations, and I think not to be guidance counselors here, but I think that would help a lot of guys.
It's good to have a path, and I do agree. Having something that is right for you and not worrying about what everybody else is doing. That is so important. You have to believe that there's something laid out for you. Have a vision. It does, and if you don't meet those visions and the checkpoints the way you see them, so be it. There's going to be a little bit of adversity on the way. But what your friends are doing might not be what is right for your career. And you have to not be skewed by everybody else. And, people say eliminate white noise or the background. You got to have your eyes on the prize. And if for you, if you feel you're a long-term developing goalie, then do what's right for that path. If you feel you're elite and ready to be excellent at 17, 18, and 19 and be impactful at the league you're playing in, then choose that route. But don't sit there and fear to yourselves that, okay, I'm 17 years old and this is my draft year and I'm not playing at the highest level. We watch every level of hockey to make sure we're not missing anybody. We watch tier 2. We watch the junior leagues. We watch all the leagues in Europe. We are looking at all times, and we are looking at free agents every day to make sure we didn't miss somebody. And just because you didn't get drafted at 17, 18, 19, or 20, and you're 21 and 22 and you're having a good year, people will look for you, okay? You're always looking what's out there, and the right teams and the right scouting evaluators are going to find you, okay?
Well, yeah, I agree 100%. And I just wanted to add a couple pieces from players that we've worked with, and how everyone is just kind of different. We had one that comes to mind for sure is Malcolm Subban. When Malcolm really only started playing goalie when he was a bantam. Not a lot of people know that. That was actually his first year of He just decided he wanted to play net. And it took him a long time to curve. And it wasn't until after really his midget until he really curved. And there was an opportunity. Belleville had him slotted in to be in Wellington playing tier 2 at 17. So they had already it looked like Malcolm was kind of on his way out. But he was lucky because he had a late birth year and he curved one summer and he just made the team and he forced guys out. That was, there was some real circumstances behind that, and how it all played out. What helped him, and what was the right thing was still because, he was a late birth year. So that, from his draft year, he still had 2 years from when he jumped into the league. So it made sense. I've also, I also like the comparison too, for a Colton Point who going into the same year, or actually his NHL draft year, he was playing midget hockey all the way through. He couldn't break through that barrier, and then he had the maturity enough to realize that I have an opportunity to go to Carleton Place, play in the CGHL at the time, and get better every day and play a lot. He ended up getting drafted to the NHL from there that season. And then, he played 1 year at Colgate University the following year. And then all of a sudden he made the World Junior team, which things happen very, very quick. But sometimes exactly what you're saying is you also have to make the right decisions on your career path, not on what the guy next to you is doing. And I love what you said, because you've got to be accepting of that. Fair to say?
Yeah, I think you said it a lot more nicely than I did.
No.
You're more polished.
More polished, yeah. Okay, so we saw the video, okay, of kind of the day-to-day. The audience has seen some clips here of, kind of what you do. And so my questions is, I I want to go a little deeper, you know. Um, I like how you do the multiple views, or you'll try and tell a kid, okay, I'm going to come see you Friday, and he gets all, prepared and he's ready and et cetera, et cetera. But then you're going to go see him on Saturday as well, right? So give a little background on a little bit of the whys behind that.
I'm aware that what I basically did was I tried to put myself in an 18 or 19-year-old's shoes. I was a draft pick of the Boston Bruins, and I recall when I was playing junior and their development person was at the rink, and I knew they were at the rink. I always felt differently, and I worried, and I put a lot of weight on myself that my performance today was going to be, dictating my future, and it had to be the best game. And if it wasn't the best game, then my career was over. And as what I assume most 18 and 19-year-olds feel and think. So I said, I don't want to do that to these kids. But there is a time when I have to see how they handle some pressure. And so I just felt, I look at the schedule, and I understand they have life events and family visiting. So if I needed to have a dinner with them afterwards, I would reach out and give them a heads up. But then I also wanted to surprise them and see, are they putting stress, and are they rigid? Are they just trying to be different, or are they just being themselves? And that's why I did that. And I'd like to surprise them, and see if their preparation is the same when I'm there and when I'm not there. Are they true to themselves? Are they true to what we believe this goalie is? So that's how I've gone about it. And sometimes it's a feel like maybe I'm scheduled to go somewhere else, and I just feel I need to see him again another day. And change the schedule and be there to see them. But that's pretty much why I did what I do.
So can you just add a little insight on that as well, as far as, you know, you've obviously done this multiple times through your time in the NHL. Do you find that the guys, their mental stamina goes to a better place because of it? Like, have you seen that? You know what I mean? From, you've done it to them in year one, there's been multiple visits, and maybe you did, you know, you only went once, you told them you were square, and then you did the double visit maybe, and then maybe you saw some things where, you know, he wasn't as good or whatever, and then, you know, they were more prepared or less nervous, or, you know, how do you find the growth? I don't want to ramble here, but do you find, hey, yeah, this guy is growing. He is handling this pressure in a better way, maybe.
For sure. I don't think I have anything to do with that. I don't. I think it's the goalie has it in themselves already to begin with, and you can expand and make it grow. We have a lot of resources available to us in the organization. So if I go in and I notice, or when I speak to his coaches, his general manager, and I do my background on a visit, and maybe he's handling situations and having a hard time. Well, we have a mental strength coach that works for us, and I can connect them and help them from that aspect. I can share my side of things. But if you, like, if I am going in to watch a goalie and I am not seeing the growth that you're mentioning, especially in the mental side of things, I am a little concerned, because I do believe it's a massive component to being a successful goalie, is being able to handle and control your emotions. You know, thankfully I haven't been able to see a lot of negativity in that aspect, but it is there. And sometimes you bet that, you know, with our coaching and our resources, that a goalie is going to take these steps. Sometimes it doesn't happen, or everything does get better, but it doesn't necessarily get to the level that's going to make a difference. But you do see it, but I do think a lot of it at the end, circling back, is the ability within the individual that you've already drafted.
Okay. So from there, I just kind of wanted for us to touch a little bit on, you know, the development process, you know, to you, where does that go? What are the key components for you, and what exactly you're trying to do over a 1 year window, a 2 year window, a 3 year window with these guys? You have a very limited space because, you know, to the viewers out there, what is it exactly? You've got 2 years to sign a guy before.
It depends on where they're from in the world, their age, they're drafted, but typically major junior is 2 years. You can have some scenarios 3 years, upwards of 4. Then it gets into some language stuff, but on average, 2 years major junior. You know, you can anticipate 3 years in American, upwards of 4. There's some NCAA rules, birthday rules, some qualifying offer type of things that scale that.
Okay, so let's just use your typical North American major junior platform here, where you've got 2 years to make a decision on a player, right, that you guys have drafted. What are some things you're looking to see, you know, his evolution as a player, and are you comfortable, you know, making that signing? Because then I would imagine that's, for you guys, that's a whole other bag of tricks from that standpoint on.
For sure. So if you're going to, you know, and I would believe, you know, like, this goes into our thought process, but you know, every team, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but how you would approach it is, if you're going to draft a goaltender who's in major junior or going in that route, you have to be certain of, you're looking ahead. They have this ability now, but where are they in 2 years when we make this decision? Excuse me. And what is year 3 going to look like for them? Because you have to make a decision as, is a goaltender going to need to return for a 20-year-old season, or is a goaltender ready to turn pro? And if he's ready to turn pro, where do you see him? Do you see him, is he going to need time at the East Coast League? Is he ready to step in and be the guy at the American League level? That's hard. That's a hard thing to do. So then you make the decision, is it best that he plays a set number of games in the American League and get some extra time at the East Coast so his minutes are high? Like, those are the kind of things you try to see ahead 2 years into the future. And it gives you an idea if this is going to be a player, that's going to fit what we're looking for, or just understanding their path, because it could take longer down the stretch, or it can be quicker. What I mean by longer or quicker is the time at the American League or East Coast level, moving towards the NHL. There's a lot that goes into that. So then when you're back watching these guys in Major Junior, there are things in their game that you saw in their draft year that you've already started your mind, and how we're going to work with these guys. What are the pressing areas in their game that needs to be cleaned up? What can wait? And when you're going to visit them as a junior, you're checking in. It's like a litmus test. All right, where's this at? Okay, is this getting better? No. Okay, if this isn't getting better, how are we going to address this? Is he playing a lot? Like, things like that are very important. It's not, did he lose or win? That's a byproduct of your team almost. It's, where are you as an individual? Where's your game going? And are you going in the direction we want you to go? That's kind of what I look for.
Yeah. And another question I really wanted to ask, as far as drafting a player, is how much do you I don't want to put this on the organization. Like, this is more of just your own personal views. Your own personal views. How much do you look at a player of what they've won? And where is that to you, and what is that worth to you?
It certainly helps, but I'm also certainly aware that at younger ages you come into situations you can't control. Right? You're selected into Major Junior. You're not controlling if the team is in a rebuild or if the team is really strong. So it definitely helps, and it supports, has the ability, whether, like, you can argue that the goalie didn't make the difference. There's everybody's out there saying, oh, he was on a good team, but he still had to win those games. I don't care what you say, it is still stressful, and there's still pressure, and there's still expectations. So that goalie, you can never take it away. But I don't hold it against any other goalie that played on a lesser team, or a team that never made the playoffs, because sometimes it's not even his fault. And so you have to look at the situation. So it will help you in a positive way, but I don't feel it hurts anybody else that didn't get an opportunity just because you got drafted to a really bad team.
I apologize. I asked you a brutal question, but I did the math, and I figured you would go there, and you answered it brilliantly. At the end of the day, is that you can't control your circumstances, and the goalies that are listening right now, as Seamus just said, you can't control your circumstances. You can control your performances, and you have everything to do inside of that, where hopefully you're going to get noticed, but you're going to get noticed on your performances. And I do believe that, there's a process to winning as well, and you can look at it from an NHL standpoint. You can look at it from, many different elements, but there's a process to winning. And I like what you said, because, I think kids need to understand that some of these things are just out of their control. It's out of their control, and where the true value is how you take your performances and what you do with them, and how you conduct yourself in that way. So wonderfully said, Seamus. Thanks, bud. I just want to keep going a little bit on the development stuff. That standpoint there is can you give us, a little bit of insights with players as far as things you may have seen, and things where, okay, that, Tim was processing this way and he was curving this way. And then maybe he hit a wall. What were some things that he did and that you did as well to help him get through those barriers, maybe, and also for the audience too, is to understand that it's not just like this, like there's going to be walls in your career. There's going to be walls on the journey here, and how you handle them are the important thing.
So many thoughts on that. I like to remind our prospects when there is adversity. When they're younger, they're just kids. So how they handle it, I don't think any of it is wrong. But I want them to understand and learn, why are you feeling this way, firstly? And what is your thought? Like, I always like to ask, what are you thinking and why? And I want them to understand that it's like, why are you wanting whatever it is? And then I always try to remind them, like, I've never had to encounter anybody that is throwing their hands up and says, that's it. Because they get it's going to be hard, but it's just nudging them the right way when it's hard for them, and learning when is it to put your foot down and press them, but when is it time to step back, or when is it time to nurture them and support them. So every goalie is different. I do recall a scenario last year. We had Jonas Johansson, and he was frustrated, and he was frustrated because it was his third year in the minors, and he wasn't getting an opportunity to play early. And this was early in the season. But what I like is what I hope people can learn from this, and it's not because Jonas is our goalie and, it's not about him and pumping him, but what I'm proud at is there was an opportunity when he had every opportunity to say, that's it, I've had enough, I can't handle this. And he stuck through a scenario where it was his third year of his contract. He wasn't getting starts early in the season, and he very well could have said, that's enough. But what did he do? He went and worked probably too hard at practice. And what I mean by working too hard is he overworked himself, where he was inefficient from what he wanted to do from a goalie standpoint and was trying to force it. But he stayed with it, and he was ready for his opportunity. And when his opportunity was there, he played excellent. He was named to the American Hockey League All-Star team by mid-season. And he actually got a call up to the NHL and played in his first NHL game. So that is a scenario that I look at that I'm really proud for a person, because it was hard, and you would get if it broke him, but it didn't. And that's why I guess the message, and it probably doesn't answer your question.
How did you slow things down for him? You know what I mean? Was it hey, we're going to go get a coffee? Was it, hey, let's go get lunch? Was it, what exactly was that down where you felt like he was doing too much to his game, as you said? What was the right gauge that you felt, okay, this is going to bring him back, and this is going to be the plan, kind of thing?
Maybe my approach isn't, universal or anything like that. Like what I do is I'm just kind of like, all right, I get you're mad, but what's going to happen when you're mad? Like, I'm not talking about Jonas here, but like, all right, you quit. All right. So what'd you do the last 20 years? What was that for? Right. So you're going to go home. I guarantee you're going to regret it. Don't let them win. You gave everything into this. So you know, yeah, you're pissed off at your coach, or you're mad and you think the management is not smart or whatever it is. Yes, so be it. I mean, like, you're going to come to work, control your attitude, control your work ethic. And I always say you can control your positioning. When our guys are having a bad practice and they're pissed off, and sometimes they're having a tantrum, sometimes they're just not going their way, just say, hey, all right, you have a choice. What are you going to do about it? You be part of the solution, or are you going to go be a prima donna? So hey, if you want to be a prima donna, I'm not wasting my time, right? I'll just go down the other end. But I remind them, what can you control in practice? Your attitude, your work ethic, and your positioning. You can't control if the pucks are going in, but it's just a lot of just calming them down. There's not one recipe, it's not one thing, but it's just getting them to realize, get the frustration out, but what's the goal here? And let's just get back to work. And
that's a strong aspect. You said you found one thing, whether that's positioning. And I always say that it's a tireless line sometimes I use with the guys, but normally I say it's two little shapes and forms here. Normally I say pucks matter, where I feel like I need to heighten their focus. Pucks matter, meaning we're not letting in anything in this practice, and there's a certain focus. But at the same time, to the opposite effect, to bring guys back sometimes, personally I'll help them realize that, okay, today I don't care if you can't stop a beach ball, but it's going to be about this. And them taking that step back sometimes and realizing, okay, I really need to key in on this specific element of my game. I mean, it takes them big steps forward. You know what I mean? Once everything, all the debris kind of settles. So, and that's what you said. So I think that's a big thing for younger goalies, older goalies that are listening right now, is that when things aren't going your way, whether it's an emotional thing or whether it is a component of a technical aspect, what is the step back that you can take? Not all these guys have goalie coaches with them, day to day or every other week. You know what I mean? Like kind of what we do, Seamus. So I think it's important to for the guys listening, when you need to take that step back. So those different kinds of emotions that you go through, what is that step back I can take? And can I stay consistent with it for, a segment of time that's going to bring me further along the way? So
can I add two things there because it made me think about guys that don't have coaching, and it's real simple, and maybe people are doing it. I get our goalie prospects and then the guys in the American League to do this. Every Sunday night, look down at your week ahead, the next 7 days of practice and games included, but focus with the practice here and just review your game. What do you think, if you don't have a goalie coach, what do you think are your weaknesses right now that you can focus on that week? And they could be as small as, all right, here are my 3 things I'm working on this week. Stick saves, recoveries to my post, as an example, or holding my feet a little bit longer. So then when you go to the rink that next day, out of those 3 for the week, have 2 that are going to be the focus point. And if the coach doesn't post a practice in the dressing room prior, ask the coach to see the practice plan. So then you can envision these drills and think, all right, this drill, not every drill is a goalie drill, and not every drill is going to be good for you in the sense of what's good for the team. But what are you going to get out of each drill? So when the coach blows a whistle, you get the water, you're not just sitting there just, shooting the shit with the boys or whatever you're doing. You got a plan. All right, it's this 2-on-1 drill. Okay, any shot to my blocker I'm going to be really good with, or I'm going to hold my feet on the angle if I can, or if this drill has a recovery, I'm going to make sure all my post recoveries are excellent. So then as the week goes on, there's a purpose from you, and you don't need a coach there to tell you, you're out of sync. You're just taking some initiative on yourself to work on little areas in each of the coach's drills that might not be goalie specific. So I ask our guys to do that when I'm not around.
Yeah, and that's a maturity thing, and having that maturity, is a huge piece to your path and where you're going to curve to, and if you have that maturity, trust us, better things are going to happen than not. I've had well, two that I can think of, two guys who maybe were on the borderline of probably not getting drafted, but these were just exceptional learners that they could do things like that, and they understood the practice of what was happening, and they understood the why, and they could handle the why, and they had that maturity. So to what you're saying, not everyone has a goalie coach. There's a lot of, even in major junior or, in school, a lot of times, in the NCAA, those aren't full-time coaches for the most part in the goalie coaching. I could be wrong. They're volunteers, I believe, in some of them. And they can't be there all the time. So you have to take those things on yourself, to truly get everything that you can out of these practice plans, and exactly, hey, this is off the rush. I want to be focusing on holding my feet. But in order to do that, you need to understand the practice and the drills of what you can get out from them. So that awesome stuff, Seamus. Really good stuff. Okay, so here's a question for coaches listening right now. If they have an athlete who they're going to be dealing with for 1 season, 2 seasons, they know there's going to be a progression state. Can you give some insights, and we'll wrap for a little bit, but what you believe of, what are some things they should be using as development standpoints, as far as this is where you want to take your athlete and why? And let's go further as far as, tools, like kind of almost use this as a chalkboard talk for the coaches as well. Tools which we believe we can help them with. But let's just go right there. If you're doing a development plan over 2 seasons, what are some keys that you think you can add?
Myself and our organization, we're big believers in games played. So for my advice, assuming that you believe playing games and you believe in that theory, I like to start with a few points, and I would recommend, if it's a 2-year plan, like you said, have an idea of the first year and the second year. How often is this goalie going to play? And if you have an idea and it's a general consensus as an organization, as a management staff, so you can expect the development to take place from playing, but then you got to look at strengths and weaknesses within the technical structure of the goaltender. How are you going to make those better in year 1 and year 2, hoping that there's an increase in the games played from the first to the second year? So, because where I'm going with that is that will decrease practice time. Then look at, depending on the age of the goalie, physical needs. Where is this goaltender physically? And what gains need to be made off the ice? Maybe it's as simple as flexibility, to strength gaining, to explosive power, to hand-eye coordination, to you name it. So how do you want to blend all those together? Take it one step further. Do you want to add a mental aspect of this? Do you want to add mental strength? Is that important to you on a weekly basis, bi-monthly, monthly? So when you look at the whole hockey season during the hockey year, you can start to fill out a plan for this goaltender. If you know he's only going to play, maybe you're in a team that only plays Friday, Saturdays. Is he going to play the Friday game? Is he going to play Saturday? Is he not even going to play this week? How are you going to utilize that time? You know, and is it, if you know the goaltender is going to play on the Friday night and not the Saturday, is this Friday night after the game, can he get a big lift in with your strength coach if that is a belief of yours? Like, how are you utilizing all of the days in the month, and how are you implementing the areas that need to be addressed and need to be worked on to build a well-rounded goaltender? I think that's very helpful. It's stuff that we believe in, and you know, it's not earth-shattering information. It's not you know, a secret ingredient by any means, but where I'm going with it is have a plan, and what is important to work on for you, build it into something, and plans will change. But I really like for our prospects, knowing that there is a goal for amount of starts. Things will change, but we've all been in a coaching office after a game on a Friday night, and you lose unexpectedly. Then the head coach panics, and well, who's going to give us the best chance to win tomorrow? And we've all been there and said, well, if I'm going to answer this question truthfully, it's your veteran goalie for obvious reasons. But are you doing disservice to the younger goaltender? So you need to look at, in my opinion, is when do you step up and say, this is right for both goalies, and this is why. But what is also right today is going to be right for your organization in the future. If you continually go back to the safe bet, the one goalie, he's going to get better. But if you always shy away in a crucial time to play the younger goaltender, or the one that needs to get developed as well, he's not going to get better. And then when it's time for the organization to use him, you want to trust and know that he can do it. It doesn't mean it's 50-50. It doesn't mean it's whatever the percentages is. You have to believe in it as a group and find your number. But if you can stay the course, and all right, we're taking a start away from him now, but you got to find that start later in the season. You have to find that ice time, and you can shift it around, but so do you shift the off ice stuff.
So is it fair to say that the communication that exists between the goalie coach, so this is obviously more you know, a piece here for goalie coaches listening. You need to have communication with your either management or, you know, the coaches that you're working with in minor hockey, for them to get them on board. Because in order for those guys to have those games, and for those athletes to get those games in which you're planning over one season, over 2 seasons, you have to have people on side, right?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a collective vision, but it needs to be a collective understanding. Everybody has to understand why decisions are made. You don't have to agree with them, but if everybody knows, it's going to take away from second guessing. It's going to be more cohesiveness as a group. You know, we have ongoing healthy debates, discussions, and presentations of ideas to the coaching staff with management. And it's different levels, so there's more people involved, but the concept should be the same. As you know, before the season even gets close to conversations, all right, here's everything we know about our goaltending situation. This is how we know our goaltenders play. Simple information that might not be available at younger age groups, but you can find it yourselves. How does the goalie play on back-to-backs? How does he play on 1 day of rest? How does he play on 2 days of rest? All that information is there at the start of the season, well before puck drop during training camp, so we can have conversations. How do we see this month playing out? If the schedule goes as planned, when would you like to start the goalies? Perfect. Now we can go to the strength department, start to get a plan in place. Now we can go and do this. We can go and do that. We can build the prospect, because, you know, I'm in the belief of develop and build your prospects, and we have a collective vision as an organization. It can be applied everywhere, and I'm not saying it's accurate, it's correct, it's right, but take something from it, put your spin on it. But the worst thing to do is be in an office and have somebody unprepared with information and then try to make a case in an argument. It never goes well, and it always creates future problems. So if you as a goalie coach really believe that this young goaltender who you're going to need in a season from now or 2 seasons from now, he can't sit there and sit on the bench, because we all know when the coach turns to him and he doesn't play well, it's, well, what did you expect, right? So, and you also have to live with, you're going to play him tonight, and everybody knows he might not be ready for that game, but you got to stick with it because you believe in the process that he will be the guy for you in 3 years or 2 years. So you can't make an emotional decision all the time on in a room. And I guess maybe to be more clear with that, you know, I have a belief on why I feel a particular amount of games played is important and why it is important. And I have that information, and I present it, and I have presented in the past to the management and the coaching staff. So at least they have an understanding of when I speak or when I make a comment or a recommendation, this is the basis of where it's coming from. And at least they don't have to agree with it, but at least they understand. And I find it very helpful. So whether it's in a conversation with your coach, your manager, or putting the plan together to make your prospect better, transparency and understanding is huge.
Yeah. And just a little piece for, coaches listening as well is, to add to, where Seamus is going, set guidelines with your staff. So whether it's a minor hockey staff, again, a major junior staff, wherever level you're coaching, doesn't matter, but implement, an August date where these messages are being provided. Set a November date. It's kind of as your midterm, and then set, just heading into playoffs. Okay. And then from there, you should just create an exit meeting with your staff and present how the plan went, adjust accordingly moving forward, because if it is, if you are working with athletes for multiple seasons, that's probably the best way of staying on page with one another. And also, did we get the objectives that we wanted to? Did we do our jobs? It's always easy to make the athletes accountable, but you also have to make yourselves accountable as well. Fair to say?
100%. We do the same. We have ongoing discussion. We have forms of information that are, accessible by, predetermined people. So, like everybody internally knows how we believe somebody is moving forward and progressing. But it's very good to communicate in early too, hey, we might be wrong. Somebody's not progressing the way it is. And, we thought in a year and a half, somebody's going to be where they are. Well, maybe it's going to be longer, or maybe this guy's coming quicker. It's just good, but like you said, it's good to have set meetings, but then it's also good to have the freedom to flow information between those set checkpoints at the same time. I think communication is massive. I think it's imperative to success, whether it's a staff, whether it's to you and your goalies. It's just massive.
Okay, little chalkboard chat here with our coaches about raw materials. This is going to maybe sound a bit strange. What are some ways that you feel keep you on track with what you're doing? This is a very small detail, but for me, I think it's very important to discuss with coaches and sometimes, you know, their parents and their volunteers and et cetera, et cetera. You know, so any little tidbits are good. For me, I use this massive book on each of our guys here in Lugano. They both have their own separate one. I like it personally because, you know, I can keep different note plans and I write everything inside of it, you know, from practices to game performances to the game numbers themselves. How was the morning skate? How are the video sessions that we have with our players after each game? And add little details and components. What questions were they asking after these, you know, meetings? And do you really think the information is soaking? The big thing I brought this up was because, you know, to where Seamus is pointing is you need a plan, but what are you doing with the information, you know, along the way? And you know, we just really want to give some coaches some different ideas of how to handle raw materials and how to translate that as well. For you, what are some stuff that helps you?
I document everything similar to yours. Like everybody has their little way, but I think it's important. However you're comfortable, track what you've done, but also have what you want to do. Compare. It's always good to go back and look. You know, because sometimes if you just go by memory, you have your core drills and you have the reasons, but then you think, oh Jesus, I've done this drill way too much, or
Yeah,
let's try that approach.
yeah,
I find for myself, and I laugh, but it's like having multiple kids. Every new goalie you work with he's going to benefit more from the mistakes of the first goalies you worked with, because you learn how to be better and different and work with them. But it's just documenting, making sure the plan is followed, and reviewing it at season's end or mid-season. But it's always good. I like taking time at the end of the season, 2 or 3 weeks away from the goalie in that aspect, and then like a self-analyzation.
mm-hmm.
At the American League level, they debrief as a staff and you're part of it, and you just kind of openly talk. What did you like? What you didn't like? About everybody shares and critiques everybody together. So some good feedback there. I like to use our development camps, which is early July, as my fiscal year. I just feel the draft is the part where you welcome the kid into the organization, but then development camp is when they first get some hands-on experience. So I use that as my start and end date for how I operate, and then build my calendar around that way. And that's at the time where I like to, when development camp finishes, I like to take some time, you know, debate in my mind where I think a kid is at, whether he's starting or progressing in our system, and I use that as his measuring stick for me, his calendar year.
Do you rate, not rate, I don't think that's a good, do you project where some of those athletes will be during that fiscal? Is that important to you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, like at the level where we are, it's all projection based. Right from the day of the draft, you're seeing a kid, you're projecting what is he going to be in the future. Then when they come in your organization, you're trying to see where is he at in meeting that projection. And you have to realistically, you know, project. It's not, oh, maybe he's going to be an NHL starter. No, maybe he's just going to be a backup. Maybe he's going to be a call-up. Maybe he's going to be an American League goalie. There's no wrong in that. That's what the path is for a goalie. But you have to be realistic when you're dealing as an organization to see where's your depth true, right? What do we really have? So as organizations, the scouts, they meet quarterly and they evaluate their own organization to make sure, you know, we are going in the direction we think we're going with our prospects. It happens all the time. but development camp is the one window when all of your prospects under a certain age can be together for a period of time. It's the only time it happens, because rookie camps, the Europeans or the NCAA players are not eligible. The Europeans typically are playing in their seasons, the NCAA for obvious reasons. So it's not everybody there. So the development camp is the one time you can have everybody together and kind of see how do we look from our interpretation.
And ultimately that helps with what you were speaking about earlier is that, you know, when it comes to your expectations, you're before that you have everything listed. You know what I mean? So whether it's, you know, there's an athletic point that you're looking to develop, whether it's a technical aspect that you're looking, a mental, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and then as well, the structure of realistically how many things you expect to achieve in a season. I would say one maybe in each component or one in each area would be more realistic as far as, you know, your fiscal. I think that should be, you know, noted with the coaches. You know, I always say A before B. I think you agree, and keep things as simple as possible. No, I really, that's a great point about the, you know, the fiscal and how, again, there's the communication that needs to exist from the staff and the people that you're working with regarding the athletes, and then your personal fiscal, which is where all your elements of where you believe you guys are going to be and should be. So all those things that Seamus was talking about are, you know, very big points, and you know, they're all very manageable, you know, with good communication and obviously with just, you know, setting some time aside, you know, a few times a week, you know, a few hours. It doesn't take a lot of time to have that kind of management for yourself, and you know, it should really simplify things for the players. On that note, this will be my last question on this topic, but how much time, just to give coaches, you know, an idea, how much time do you spend on that management just personally for yourself when you're looking at, okay, Johnny, this is where he is, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going through his, you know, through his first 3 months. I'm going through his plan of where I want to go. I'm on track. We are on track. How much is that daily management of that plan? You know, what are we looking at?
Uh, I think it's every day. I think you're like, I have 5 goalies under my umbrella right now that I really am invested with. It's every day. Now, some days you think more of one than the other because the situation is different. Obviously, when you're doing the typing and creating the language of how you want that year to go, and you're connecting the different departments to help make this plan work, that takes time. That's just administrative stuff that, depending on how fast you type, is how fast you move. That's always, I find that fun, and it takes you know, a couple weeks to get it all put together. But once it's together, it's just managing and making sure, do we need to make an amendment? Does this need to adjust? Does that need to change? And that's all. Like you watch film, you watch a practice. You know, if I'm not there, our practices are filmed. I can watch them that night. I didn't, you know what? I thought maybe this was what was going to work on. Let's make an adjustment, right? So it's always in motion. You're just trying to level the bar. If I always think about it as the skill sets, if it's a bar level, maybe these are here, but this one's sinking, so we got to bump this one back up. Like I got to balance.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you find that those are almost like templates that you're creating for your athletes?
Yeah, I guess I never thought of it that way. I just kind of just figured this is what is working. This is, I find, like, even no differently than your students, or who we work with, everybody learns and works differently. I realize how I work and what works well for me. And when I feel ready and efficient with my instruction and how I want to execute what I'm doing when I'm prepared. But if I'm not prepared, I might be able to give off an impression. Yeah, I got it together, but I feel in my heart I winged it and I'm not ready. And I don't want to be that. So if it's a template, if it's what it is, I at least know now that each of these goalies, through my experience, that I need to do it these ways with them, obviously with the blessing of the higher ups that always sign off on what we want to do, and then I go and do it. But it's not the same though. The only thing that's the same amongst everybody is the quality and how you interact and treat them. But the concept is the same, so maybe it is a template, but the execution and the meat of it is different. But nobody, whoever you are, everybody gets the equal amount of attention. I don't care if you're a prospect being listed in the hockey news or you're just, somebody different. You're the same. Nobody gets more extra ice or less extra ice. Everybody is treated the same. I had a coach one time at the pro level treat my partner and myself very different. I've never forgot that, and I told myself I'll never do that. So
yeah. Do you just to add to the template concept, just for the coaches is, I'll bring my mother into this, but my mother was a principal, and when she first started, her job, there was a lot of work coming home. But as the years went on and went on and went on, it wasn't that my mother was checking out and she was just riding into the sunset. It was that the work was laid out, the templates were laid out. So the more, as an educator that she continued to go, she had those benches, and those marks for her planning, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, as you're going, hopefully, as a coach, you're going to learn from your mistakes, you're going to learn from your successes, but the journey of how to get there will become less and less complicated, I think. Is that fair to say?
100%. You put a little, you invest some time early and figure out what works for you and figure out what is your process, and don't make it complicated. But this process, there's a guideline and I feel comfortable with it. Then as time goes on, it will run itself, and it's up to you just to make sure it's flowing in the right direction, and keep it simple, right?
Okay, great stuff.